Hey everyone, Dr. Richard Lai here with Study Acupuncture with me. And a quick reminder first to go to my website, www.studyacuvithme.com, and sign up for the email list. Signing up for that email list gets you free study guides with each podcast episode, so please go sign up right now. So, today's episode is all about the heart organ and its functions, and next week we're going to review the functions of the urinary bladder. And I like to release this episode every single Sunday, so expect it on Sunday. That way you have something to listen to on your drive to work on Monday. And also I want to say, if that drive to work on Monday is the only time of solitude and only time of peace that you have, and you're spending it by listening to my podcast, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate that you're spending it with me because, at least for me, that time in the car in the morning, sometimes that's really the only time of peace and quiet that I have. So it's a really sacred time. And I remember when I was going to acupuncture school, I was working full time. I was going to acupuncture school at night and on the weekends. And during that drive in the morning, it'd be quiet, but I'd be thinking, I have a quiz tonight, I have midterm next week, I have to write a paper. And I'd be reviewing my flashcards at work, like it's in my pocket while I'm at work. And anytime there's downtime, I'm just like reviewing for the exam. So I get it. So that's why I make these podcasts, because you're busy and you just need someone to take their time getting into the material with you. So thank you for letting me do that for you. And in order for me to keep doing that for you, we need to hear a quick word from our sponsor. All right, so this episode is on the functions of the heart. Now, the heart is a very important organ, if not the most important organ, because it's literally called the emperor. And the emperor is the sovereign ruler ruling the empire. So, from an organ standpoint, what is the function of this sovereign ruler? So, the main function of this sovereign ruler, the heart, is to govern blood. And that governing blood includes governing the blood vessels. Another function of the heart is to govern the mind. And if you've ever sat in my class before, I refer to this explanation a lot because the blood is the residence of the mind, meaning it houses the mind. The heart also governs blood. So, by transitive property, since blood is the residence of the mind and heart governs blood, that's one reason why heart houses the mind. And this relationship between heart, mind, and blood, it affects so many factors of our life. For example, it affects our sleep quality. Now, let me ask you, how is your sleep? And I know it's sort of a loaded question because I bet you the answer is that you don't get good sleep. So the question is why? Why don't you get good sleep? And here's where we as acupuncturists come in because we are blessed with that ability. We are blessed with the ability to try and answer that question for our patients. The question of why. Why isn't our patient getting restful sleep? And through our investigative process, we can find out why. Because one of the main factors that determines our sleep quality is the health and status of our blood and of our yin. And this is because blood is the residence of the mind, which just means that the heart houses the mind. And there are 5 major heart mind functions. Number 1 are mental activities. Number 2 are consciousness. Number 3 are memory. Number 4 are thinking. And then number 5 is our sleep. Now, to get even more specific, the mind is housed in the blood. Specifically, it's housed in heart blood. And we also have the Hun. The Hun is housed in the liver. The Hun is also known as the ethereal soul. So, if there's anything affecting the blood, that can cause the mind or even the Hun to lose its residence in the blood. And that's going to cause you to have poor sleep. Since heart governs blood, blood is the residence of the mind. So, these 3 things we really need to exercise intention to care for: heart, blood, mind, since they all affect each other. Which brings us back to the first function and main function of the heart, which is that it governs blood. Now, this governing blood, it encompasses 2 things. It encompasses circulation and it encompasses production. And in the study guide that I'm going to give you today, there's a diagram on the formation of blood. And this diagram is the process in which food qi is turned into blood. And this takes place in our heart. So clinically, if we have a healthy heart, then our production of blood will be healthy. Our circulation will be healthy. But if there's a dysfunction to our heart qi, then you're going to see pathological manifestations in our patients. For example, we might see that they have cold hands, or sweaty hands, that's because of the circulation issue. Or, like we mentioned before, if there's an issue with the blood or something's affecting the blood, the mind, the Hun can be affected. And that's why our sleep quality will also then be affected. All right, so now the next function of the heart is that it controls the blood vessels. So that means every blood vessel, our arteries, our veins, our coronary arteries, our capillaries in our fingers and our toes, because number one, heart governs blood, which means it governs circulation. But on top of that, the heart actually governs the health of the actual tubes itself, the blood vessels. So if a patient has good heart health, they have good heart chi, then their blood vessels will also be healthy. Their circulation will also be healthy. But if they have a deficient heart, they have heart blood deficiency or heart blood stasis, that's going to reflect in the pulse, and it's actually even going to reflect in the actual blood vessel itself. For example, with heart blood stasis, that can actually result in things like atherosclerosis. All right, so now the next function of the heart is that it manifests in the complexion. So now this is an offshoot of the fact that the heart governs blood, which means it governs circulation. The heart governs the blood vessels in the body, which means when it comes to assessing our patients, the complexion of their face can be used as a data point for our evaluation because we have blood vessels in our face that makes our face rosy or makes our face pale. So if circulation is normal or if circulation is weakened, maybe there's a deficiency of the heart or there's blood deficiency, or sometimes there's a pathogenic factor that's affecting the blood, like, for example, heat. That can manifest on the face. Now, if there's deficiency in heart blood, for example, how can we know this in our patient? Well, we can look at their complexion. If our patient has a dull, pale complexion, that's a sign that they could have heart blood deficiency. Even when we look at the tongue, when we see a pale tongue, what does a pale tongue mean when we look at the tongue? It could mean either yang qi deficiency or it could mean blood deficiency. The question is, how do we differentiate between the two? We have to look for an extra factor. We have to look to see, is the tongue too wet or is it just plain dry? So if it's dry, that means it's blood deficiency. If it's too wet, then it's yang qi deficiency. Now, with the complexion of the face, if it's dull and it's pale, that's an indication that it's blood deficiency. On the other hand, if the face is pale but it's bright, like it's a bright white complexion, then that's an indication that it's heart yang qi deficiency. So that's basically how the heart manifests in our complexion and how we can see the pathologies that are affecting the heart just by analyzing the colors of the face. All right, now the next function of the heart is that it houses the mind. Now, that's an important saying to understand. The heart houses the mind. Now, the mind can also be called the Shen. The Shen means spirit. And we can drill pretty deeply into this word Shen because when we refer to Shen and we're talking about heart, we're talking about mind. So mind is equal to Shen. Now, we can also talk about Shen with spiritual aspects because we have yin organs, and each yin organ has a spiritual aspect to it. We have the heart, liver, lung, kidney, we have spleen, and each has a spiritual aspect to it. So, the heart, we have the mind or the Shen. For the liver, we have the ethereal soul or the Hun. For the lung, we have the Po or the corporeal soul. For the kidney, we have the willpower or the zi, the zhi. And then for the spleen, we have the intellect or the yi. So basically, when we assess our patient, we assess their Shen, their spirit. And from a clinical sense, when we assess Shen, we're actually assessing the health and status of their qi and blood overall. Because qi, qi is defined as vital force. So when we're assessing their Shen, we're assessing their vitality, their spirit, their mind, their ethereal soul, their corporeal soul, their willpower, their intellect. So basically, in reference to the health and status of their chi and blood, we can pull on the thread, for example, of willpower. If we're assessing our patient and we talk to them and we see that they just seem to lack drive, they lack willpower. Now, this can be an indication that there's something awry with the health and status of their kidney chi. If we see that they have no aims in life, they have no direction in life, that could be an indication that there's something up with their liver organ. So when we assess Shen, We assess our patient's overall health and status of qi and blood, and we can pull at these different strings to get to different organs in that way. All right, so now the next function of the heart is that it controls sweat. So, with sweat, we should first talk about what sweat is. And basically, in our body, we have body fluids. These body fluids are called 精液 in Chinese, which basically just means organic fluids. Now, jin or jin is light, it's clear, it's watery. And jin is actually exuded as sweat. This jin actually circulates with the wei qi in our li. That li is the area between the skin and the muscles. Now, in terms of blood and body fluids, they have a common origin. They're both produced from the food and drink that we eat. Now, in the study guide, you have a body fluid formation diagram, and you can see there the spleen sends some pure fluid up to the lung, and the lung will descend and disperse that fluid, which disperse, we can also say diffuse. So the lung diffuses the body fluids for sweating. It does this by sending body fluids to the li. Now, this episode is on the heart, and one of the functions of the heart is that it controls sweat. Now, sweat comes out of the li, and another function of the heart that we already talked about is that it governs blood. So, we have blood, we have sweat, we have body fluids. Now, there's a relationship between blood and body fluids, which sweat we're talking about as a body fluid, in that blood and body fluids can mutually interchange. So, mutual interchange just means that body fluids will enter the blood vessel and it's going to change into blood. Now, this only happens when blood is too thick. Because remember, we talked about jin. Jin is light, clear, and watery. So if blood is too thick, then the body fluids are going to enter into the blood vessel and it's going to thin the water down. So from a clinical standpoint, if the heart's function is to control sweat and to govern blood, all of that can actually be affected if there's a pathology that's affecting the heart or a deficiency in the heart itself. For example, if there's heart qi deficiency, our patient's going to have spontaneous sweating because the function of controlling the sweat, the function of governing the blood, the function of mutual interchange would be affected. Hey, and that brings us to the end of this episode. So I hope you got tremendous value out of this episode. If you're heading to work right now or you're at work right now, have a wonderful rest of your day. If you're at the gym or you're outside walking, maybe you're walking your dog, enjoy every minute of that exercise. And if you're at home doing some chores or you're out running some errands, thank you for spending the time with me. So if this is your first time listening, make sure you get on the email list because there is a study guide associated with this episode. Now, I also send a monthly email out where I rotate the PDFs on a monthly basis. So if in case you miss out on this study guide at the time of its release, if you're on the email list, you're not going to miss any of the previous study guides. So make sure you go to www.studyaccuwithme.com and fill out that quick, easy, short form to get on the study guide email list. All right, everyone, until next time, God bless and happy studying.